And I would like to invite our TG2 vice chairs and chair. If you can turn on your cameras, we're going to now shift to the panel discussion. So those who do not know these people, so you see here Chris, Thomas van Asch, also Zissis, who's there as well. They are very known because they're also the vice chairs of the thematic group number 2, which concerns corridors, hubs, and synchronodality, which is extremely network relevant, which is why we kind of decided to also have this panel discussion with them, because as I said before, the BOOSTLOG projects, they focused on closed projects that were funded. They were funded a few years ago. However, now the question is, how can we actually learn from these implementation cases, but also discuss how the future network should look like? Because as you have observed, we have short sea shipping, we have railways and so on, but there are also inland waterways that have never been covered. So the question is, what kind of future developments we can expect? And our vice chairs are also experts in the field, which is why we would like to learn from them and to assess how the future could look like and where the innovation directions should be headed. Now, I see Chris here, Zissis, and Thomas van Asch. Salva could not make it because, as I said, he emailed that he has the flu. That being said, I would like to start a panel discussion by asking a specific question to our vice chair. We can discuss it, but also if the audience have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat box, or feel free to raise your hand and we can actually have a more interactive discussion here as well. Okay, so Chris, Thomas, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine,
Good.
thanks a lot. Enjoying the
Good
session.
afternoon, everybody.
Yep, okay, that's my way of double checking the audio as well, if you can hear you, so that's actually very good. Now, the question I have in mind now is, what is the importance of logistics networks to you and your organizations, and why should Alice and Alice members, but also the general freight and logistics community, be engaged in the future, and in which directions? I don't know who would like to start this or answer this, if it's this is Thomas or Chris, or do I just flip a coin? Who wants to go first?
You'll need to flip a coin, Thomas. Assign someone.
Okay, so Chris, you have spoken out, so it's you.
Always the same. I'm sorry about that. No, I think logistics networks, for me, I mean, optimal logistic networks guarantee maximal flexibility within a network. And I think we're all here from the perspective of being members of Alice or interested in Alice, so from the physical internet perspective. So these performant and strong networks always provide an alternative solution in case of disruption. So the resilience aspect, I think, is really important. And it's also an environment, I think, that these logistics networks offer the backbone to those new economic models that we will need to tackle all the challenges that are coming up to us. So that links to the work that has been done by the group. And what I also want to, I think, explain a little bit more is that disruption is not only a negative or something like a natural disaster, but for me also different rates of implementing innovation is also a disruption. So a network always gives you flexibility in any way. So that for me is really important.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Thomas, what will be your take on this matter?
I think collaboration for me is key, and that's not only within our own air cargo industry or in our own aviation industry, if you want to, but I think collaboration also within the different transport modes, and that's something we are still lacking in aviation. I think some other transport modes are showing better examples, are doing a better job. But what we saw during the last couple of years is that also our air cargo industry is looking to other transport modes. We are starting to see the shift, and I think a platform as Alice, where collaboration is key, where ideas like the physical internet concept are developed, I think that's the way forward. So to me, and to our community in Brussels, collaboration and working together as a logistic network or be part of a logistics network is absolutely relevant.
Yeah, very well said, Thomas. Thank you. This
At Zinlecom, we have been working with networks and with physical internet projects since some years now, starting from Iconet. We have Planet also, which is quite a big as a project, and we have been focusing also in the area on inland waterways, which is quite important. The logistics networks is obviously the place to be because it's the place which connects suppliers, manufacturers, and all the modes which are coming of increasing importance, and they open new opportunities. New technologies are a field also that they are increasing the reach and the value that is gained from networks like the Internet of Things, which is quite important, and business process improvements like new business models like synchromodality or and all these things. So, and especially for inland waterways, which is a means that apparently has to be multimodal and can be combined. They are of very big importance.
is. Yeah, thank you very much, Sis. And you spoke about inland waterways. We have also here Thomas from Air Cargo Belgium, which is air cargo. We have also Chris, who is pioneering a little bit of fifth mode of transportation. And that's also a bit of my last second question, which is to tickle a little bit of discussion. Because as I said before, most of these cases reviewed by BOOSTLOG, they concern railways, short sea shipping, and road. Do you miss any other modes that should be addressed in the future developments?
I have to
Yeah.
say yes, no.
No. I would like to jump in, and I think Thomas will join me or elaborate on it for sure. Again, from the physical internet perspective, it's all about the optimal use of a complete network. So, and a complete network can only work when there's good interconnectivity between the transport modes. So, I'm really happy that Thomas highlighted that importance, and so also that air is looking at different modes. As you know, I'm also looking in the fifth transport mode. But if you're looking to like engage more other modes, that interconnectivity is really important to understand what those modes can bring to the network. So how, and now I'm talking from the perspective of the fifth transport mode, but how can a fifth transport mode bring value to rail, to high-speed rail, to air, and basically to maximize their potential contribution to that network. So I think that's really important, not only the volumes within that transport mode, but really the function, like whether it's continental, intercontinental, regional, how that all interconnects. I think that's a domain that we need to explore more and deeper. That's from my perspective.
And could you just please clarify for the audience what the fifth mode of transportation is, because people might not know some of them?
Yeah, the fifth, I focus mainly on Hyperloop, but it's more than Hyperloop alone, of course. It's also tube transport, underground transport, but also spillover technology from what's being developed there. So you have in very short Hyperloop it's tube transport under pressure, but basically you could have that on different levels that could be used in different ways, which no longer is a hyperloop, but is tube transport. So it can go to also for cities or other solutions. So if we develop new things, then we have to see how they can be relevant to a network or the physical internet concept. So that's my take on it.
Yep, thank you, Chris. Thomas, you were jumping to take the floor as well, so I'm going to give the floor to you as a second one, and then this is.
No, thanks, Thomas. I think I fully agree with what Chris was saying. I think we as a cargo industry, as aviation industry, we can add value to other transport modes, but absolutely also vice versa. I think what we start to notice in our industry, for example, is that pharmaceutical shippers start to challenge the aviation industry. It's a typical air cargo product, let's say vaccines and other pharmaceuticals. We ship that all over the world, and we did that in a quite good way the last couple of years. However, the pharma industry is really challenging us to make use of other transport modes, to link with other transport modes. And I think if such a strong industry as the pharmaceuticals is challenging us as an aviation industry, we should start to look to others as well. And I really fully agree with what Chris was saying in that way. We can strengthen other transport modes, we can strengthen road transport, but also other transport modes like maritime transport. But I think that's also in the other way around. So that's for me absolutely very important.
Yep, indeed. And you can actually observe these patterns changing because the BOOSTLOG projects, they were developed, I don't know, like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and what the range is quite far. But then nobody knew about COVID-19, nobody knew about epidemics, pandemics, nobody knew about digitalization levels, about IoT, telematics devices, sensors, and so on.
Mhm,
These things were rather limited or unknown. Therefore, we also have to adapt to the new changing world. And this is actually the new normal is actually not a stable normal, but it's an evolving normal as well. So we have to be very agile, and also we need to build more agile networks which take into
mhm,
account more than two and three modes. We need to actually spread our eggs and put them into more baskets
mhm.
compared to only putting all the eggs into one basket. And now I'm going to still give the floor to Zissis to also react on the question still.
Yeah, obviously, if we want to achieve the goals to reduce carbon emissions, then we need to provide solutions that they include all the possible best and most efficient options available, including all these other modes referred, and I will stick again to inland waterways transport. And we see that there is recently receiving, this mode is receiving attention, and there are currently quite a lot of projects coming up, and they are also about sustainability and resilience. And from this point to advertise next week, which is the Inland Waterways Week in Brussels, and there are quite a few things to happen there and to appear, and especially on the 21st, we have a presentation of many European projects that they are under this umbrella.
Mhm. Yeah, indeed. And I also agree, of course, with uses because in the past there were not a lot of funding channels for inland waterways. That's why it could be more short sea shipping oriented, railway oriented, and road oriented. But now there's also evidence that DG Move and the European Commission, they really support the inland waterways via new projects which emerged just last year, be it Crystal, be it Renew, be it Ploto, which are the sibling projects. Also, as you know very well, IWNet, Patina 3, Novi Move, and there's a lot of them, even when it comes to Naiades Actions and DINA 3, uh, Naiades 3 and DINA and DIVA. So it's actually a lot happening in terms of projects and initiatives. And this kind of leads me to my third question, which is I kind of provided my view now, but what is your view when it comes to current projects and future calls? Are they different compared to the past projects? Do you share this view? Do you see it a bit differently? And have you observed any specific changes? And if so, in which areas these changes would be observed by you? And then maybe we can also give the floor to Lars because I think he has a comment also in the chat box. So should we now reverse the setting and start with this and then Thomas and then Chris? You're muted, by the way. Just this is if you're speaking to us, you are still on mute.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, very good question. Um, I believe that the focus recently is more to sort of yeah, includes uh, quite a lot of let's say it's about the digital transformation, and then it's uh, of how the needs of research and innovation can be achieved by digital transformation. Projects are also now are advancing to higher level TRLs, and they want to demonstrate more impactful results, and yeah, user driven as always, and they are sort of aiming to involve and engage more stakeholders. Obviously, there is an availability of different frameworks, and there are different also sort of uh, uh, funding opportunities available for projects that they can be used in parallel. So it is an area that I see progressing and advancing, and is maturing.
Yep, thank you. Thomas?
Well, I just want to link a bit your previous question with this one. I think that the key to make it work in the future is digitization, and I think and that's I think something we all agree on is that there is more funding available for digitization projects and new technologies and things like that. And I think that's a very good trend we see nowadays. Although I have to be honest, within our industry at least, it's still very difficult for our companies. I see if it's not us, is it not like an organization like Alice, for example, very little companies within the air cargo industry are really engaged in this kind of project. So I think it's also important to take that with us, that we really we have to take them by their hands and to take them along the road to do the next step, because that's something I consider as lacking in our air cargo industry nowadays, which is, to my opinion, a little bit different from other transport modes nowadays. So I really have the feeling we have to speed up. I think the possibilities are there, but not exploited yet by or yeah, within our industry to the full extent.
Yep, Chris?
Yeah, I will take a little step back, and what I notice is that there is more, I would say, importance on the implementation possibilities. So this is already mentioned, the focus on use cases, demos, that has been really already included, was already happening in Horizon 2020, but you see that more. There's a lot of attention to, I would say, real possibilities for upscaling, be it to the acceptation of the concepts by industry. So that links to what Zisis was talking about, stakeholder consultation and engagement. So I think that's really something that I really notice. And also the demand for, I would say, practical policy advice. So really, how can we implement these solutions? And there is a certain, I would say, more awareness and more attention to who are the stakeholders that are the biggest lever to force changes, to have really a systemic change in the end. So that is something I notice in general as a philosophy in the calls, let's say.
Yep, thank you. And before I pose my last question, or I'm going to actually pose it, but I would also like to maybe invite Lars to the virtual floor, because he has a question, but my question concerns also his comment a little bit. Because my question would be, are there actually simple enough solutions that cover or integrate all modes of transportation and their related networks? Or do we still work in silos which relate to inland waterways, roads, railways, short sea shipping? What could break these silos? Is it more about the communication standards? Is it more the industry approach? Is it only the cost? Is it the lead times? Is it emissions? So what would that be in your view? And that also kind of links to the combination of modes that Lars pointed out. Lars, what's your take on this? And I'm also referring a little bit to your comments from the TIC 4.0 workshop that we had. So how could we harmonize all these modes?
Yeah, I think the answer is not the easiest one, but because now I have to mix my original statement with your answer, with your question, and to answer it. I think first of all, what we have to understand is that each mode of transport really has its role and its benefit. And there are maybe certain relations, certain regions, certain cases where each mode is really better, but also where each mode has really problems. And when I remember the times in our green projects at the time, how to overcome the problems and the discussions about this, let's say, totally new idea at that time of eco came up with the combination with short sea and rails. And it was just a matter that we talked really about dedicated problems on a dedicated section which had to be answered. And then there was an open thinking. So one statement I wanted to make, and I think this is also mentioned it, projects with a higher TRL have by nature a much higher chance to be implemented, so that the solutions are implemented at the end, because there's a real problem. And if you find the right answer to a real problem, then for sure you can implement the solution. And this makes it also attractive for the industry to invest, for all partners to invest in something. So therefore, one answer would always be think out of the box, try to find the right answers to the right solutions. And if in certain cases this is a fifth transport mode, I would be happy to include it also in some rail projects. I would have no problems for it. At the moment, Chris, I do not see it, but really, let's think about it. And I think this is really the most important thing. Digitalization is one thing which we have to, let's say, focus on just to have this flexibility. Because what we see now, and I'm always quite blunt when talking about it, there are so many standards that we do not have a standard. And therefore I was a little bit not annoyed, but I was surprised to hear that there is a new structure with a new standard, which makes it not easier. And so let's really try to think about in favor of logistic networks, how we can overcome this, because any kind of combination of transport mode really requires that at least from the IT systems, which are independent from a transport mode, we have this interoperability, because then it's much easier to connect them. And this is, for me, very often the problem, that each sector is trying to do own things, and by this is separating from the other modes. And this would be my key statement. So think about real problems and avoid separation again by IT systems.
And leveraging actually existing solutions which are out there, not reinventing the wheel in terms of new standards. Yep. Okay, so we are approaching the end, so maybe we can still take 2 or 3 more minutes. And I'm going to ask Zissis, Thomas, and Chris to react to the silo question in one sentence. I'm going to challenge you. So if you can do it in one sentence, that will be your punchline. What would that be? And let's go the old way. So Chris.
Okay. Thank you again for that. Well, I think to throw something in, something that makes it more complex, energy transition. Energy transition will require a rethink of the modus operandi in many cases. So that's an opportunity to rethink and redesign logistics networks. And there's a big field there to redesign that.
Yep. Very good. Thomas?
One short comment, I think it is just think out of the box. I think that's the most important thing we have to do.
Yeah. Zissis?
Yeah, I think Lars nailed it. Everything is, he said, I agree. My phrase is digitalization, collaboration, and collaboration. And
Yep. And I see also Niklas, who was the author of the cloud report. So maybe Niklas, if you have any final words before we close this meeting.
First of all, collaboration is fine. So we have another cloud report on this. So you see, other areas are important to improve logistic networks. And secondly, I think so. We talk about the interface and everything. So, but each I think also each mode has to improve itself to contribute to logistic networks. So it's not only about interfaces, but it's also to make all modes themselves more suitable to to logistic networks.
Mm-hmm. Yep, excellent. Okay, so I see we're already over time. I see also that quite a few people have left already in the meantime. So I would like to thank you all for your participation. This is also a session which is recorded, so it's going to be shared with the Alice members as well. So those who could not attend, they will still have the opportunity to have a look at it afterwards. So once again, also congratulations to the winners, well deserved. Very, I would say, pioneering work which is happening, which is great. And I think a lot of current projects and also future proposals can actually learn from these implementation cases. And it's also very clear that sometimes it's not the main goal to develop technology just for the sake of developing technology, but these technological solutions should be also addressing real solutions. So what my message would be to conclude is not to develop techniques, technologies, and then chase the problem afterwards. We should start with the problem first, which we want to solve, and then try to create technological solutions to solve that problem and not the other way around. So thank you very much once again, and see you soon in other Alice events.